In the previous video, we began creating the model with the auction class. In this video, I'll show how to expose that model to the world by creating a controller that interacts with it. To create the new controller, simply right-click on the Controllers folder and choose the Add Controller menu option. You can choose whatever you like for the controller name, as long as it's a valid C# class name that ends with the suffix controller. Keep in mind, however, that the name you use, other than the controller suffix, is what will show up in your URLs by default. For this example, we'll use the name Auctions Controller. Next, look at the list of controller templates. There are several options in the list to choose from, and we'll see all of them in action throughout the course. But for now, we'll start simply by choosing the empty MVC controller template. Then, click Add to have Visual Studio generate your controller. When it's done, we can see that Visual Studio has created the bare minimum code required to create an MVC controller. That is, a C# class that derives from the system.web.mvc.controller class and whose class name ends with the name controller. It also generates a controller action for us in the form of the index method. We can begin exposing this class to the web by creating something called controller actions, which are nothing more than public methods in the controller that return some kind of value to the user. Here we can see that Visual Studio has already generated a default action called index for us that will act as the default action for the controller. As mentioned earlier, controller actions must return some kind of result that will act as the reply to the user. And the initial code for this controller action simply calls the ASP.NET MVC view helper method to indicate that the framework should return the view of the same name as the action that was called. In this case, it'll return a view named index. With this controller added, you can now run your site and navigate to the URL that corresponds to the name of the controller and the action. In this case, it's /auctions/index. You can see that our action is indeed executed, but ASP.NET MVC complains because it can't find the view that we told it to display. That's to be expected, since we haven't actually created the view yet. To rectify that, move on to the next video, which shows you how to create an ASP.NET MVC view.